The Galactic Council's decision to exile a human and a Wagner to the desolate planet Xerxes 9 sets in motion a series of events that will lead to an unexpected family on a world designed for death. As the Council's judgment echoes through the chambers, two figures stand before them. Jeffrey Wright, a decorated Earth military veteran, and Lita, a brilliant but rebellious Wagner scientist. Jeffrey's muscular frame tenses as the charges are read. His attempt to steal Wagner technology, driven by Earth's desperate need for advancement, has led to his conviction for espionage. Beside him, Lita's iridescent skin shimmers with barely contained defiance. Her crime, conducting illegal genetic experiments that threaten the Wagner's strict biological laws. The Council's verdict is swift and harsh. Exile to Xerxes 9, a planet of scorching twin suns, limited water, and deadly predators. What the condemned pair doesn't know is that they are merely test subjects in the Council's cruel experiment to study survival on inhospitable worlds. As the transport ship descends through Xerxes 9's atmosphere, Jeffrey and Lita are separated and dropped on opposite sides of the planet. The ship's engines roar as it departs, leaving them alone in a sea of endless sand dunes. Jeffrey hits the ground running, his military training kicking in immediately. He assesses his meager supplies, a basic water purifier, a multi-tool, and a week's worth of rations. The twin suns beat down mercilessly as he begins his trek across the barren landscape, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Miles away, Lita's scientific mind races as she examines her surroundings. Her tentacle-like appendages grip a datapad, the only piece of technology she managed to smuggle. She quickly begins cataloging the planet's flora and fauna, searching for potential food and water sources. As night falls, bringing a bone-chilling cold, Jeffrey constructs a shelter using techniques learned in survival training. He fights off an attack from a pack of nocturnal predators, their bioluminescent eyes glowing in the darkness. His combat skills prove invaluable as he fends them off with improvised weapons. Lita, meanwhile, discovers a hidden oasis. Her understanding of xenobiology allows her to identify safe water sources and edible plants. She begins to formulate theories about the planet's ecosystem, her scientific curiosity never dimming despite her dire circumstances. Days pass as both exiles push deeper into the planet's interior. Unbeknownst to each other, they're drawn to the same location. On the horizon, ancient structures begin to emerge from the shifting sands. Ruins of a long-extinct alien civilization rise before them, promising shelter and the tantalizing possibility of hidden resources. Jeffrey approaches the ruins cautiously, his soldiers' instincts on high alert. As he enters the crumbling structures, he discovers strange symbols etched into the walls. Could these be clues to a way off this hellish planet? Lita, arriving from the opposite direction, is awestruck by the advanced technology incorporated into the ruins' design. Her fingers trace over control panels covered in millennia of dust, mind racing with the potential knowledge hidden within. As they independently explore the vast complex, neither is aware of the other's presence. The stage is set for an unexpected encounter between the human soldier and the Wagner scientist. In this unforgiving alien world, two outcasts from different worlds are about to collide, their combined skills holding the key to survival and perhaps something more. The Galactic Council's plan to dispose of these troublesome individuals is about to backfire spectacularly. For in sending a human and an alien to die on a desert planet, they've unknowingly planted the seeds of a family that will defy the odds and change the course of galactic history. As the ancient structures emerged from the shifting sands, Jeffrey and Lita found themselves drawn inexorably towards the heart of the ruins. Unaware of each other's presence, they began their separate explorations of the vast alien complex. Jeffrey's boots crunched on the weathered stone as he moved cautiously through the dim corridors. His eyes, now accustomed to the harsh glare of Xerxes 9's twin suns, struggled to adjust to the murky interior. The walls were adorned with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an inner light, casting eerie shadows across his path. As he ventured deeper into the ruins, a faint rustling sound caught his attention. Jeffrey froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the makeshift spear at his side. In a flash, he found himself surrounded by a writhing mass of Xerxian sand vipers. Their heat-sensing organs locked onto his warm body, and they struck with lightning speed. Jeffrey's military training kicked in as he spun and dodged, his spear a blur of motion. He dispatched two of the creatures in quick succession, their scales shattering under the force of his blows. But the vipers were relentless. One slipped past his guard, its fangs sinking into his calf. Jeffrey grunted in pain but maintained his focus, using the creature's momentum to fling it against the wall. The battle raged on, Jeffrey's movements becoming more labored as the venom worked its way through his system. With a final burst of strength, he managed to drive off the remaining vipers. Panting heavily, he slumped against the wall, examining the wound on his leg. It wasn't deep, but the venom posed a significant threat. Miles away, Lita's tentacle-like appendages deftly manipulated the controls of her makeshift water filtration system. She had discovered an underground aquifer near the ruins, a vital resource in this arid world. As she worked, her mind raced with possibilities. The ruins hinted at a level of technology far beyond anything she had encountered before. A low growl interrupted her thoughts. Lita turned to see a pack of Xerxian predators approaching, drawn by the scent of water. Their bioluminescent eyes glowed in the growing darkness, reflecting the light of the planet's 3 rising moons. Lita quickly assessed her options. She had constructed rudimentary defenses around her camp, but they wouldn't hold against a determined attack. Her tentacles flew over her datapad, rapidly inputting commands. With a whir, a force field sprang to life around the aquifer, its energy crackling in the dry air. The predators snarled and paced, unable to breach the barrier. Lita allowed herself a moment of relief before turning her attention back to the ruins. The technology she had uncovered suggested terraforming capabilities. If she could unlock its secrets, perhaps she could transform this hellish world into something habitable. As night fell, bringing with it a bone-chilling cold, both Jeffrey and Lita found themselves drawn to a massive structure at the center of the ruins. Jeffrey, his injury slowing him down, navigated through a series of deadly traps. His combat instincts saved him more than once as he dodged poison darts and leaped over collapsing floors. Lita approached from the opposite direction, her scientific mind working overtime to decipher the complex locking mechanisms barring her path. Her tentacles danced across alien control panels, bypassing security measures with a combination of intuition and experimentation. Unbeknownst to each other, they converged on what appeared to be the main control room. Jeffrey, exhausted and in pain, set up a small camp in one corner. He tended to his wound, acutely aware of his dwindling supplies. The venom had left him feverish, and he knew he needed to find a sustainable food and water source soon. Lita entered the room from another entrance, her eyes widening at the sight of the advanced technology surrounding her. She approached a central console, her tentacles hovering over the controls as she debated the wisdom of activating such ancient systems. Curiosity won out. Lita pressed a sequence of buttons and the room hummed to life. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing schematics of Xerxes 9 and its dormant terraforming system. But her excitement was short-lived. An alarm blared, and the structure began to lock down. The sudden noise startled both Jeffrey and Lita. Each became aware of another presence in the room. Jeffrey grabbed his spear, ignoring the pain in his leg as he took up a defensive stance. Lita clutched her datapad to her chest, her tentacles curling protectively around her. They moved cautiously through the dim room, the glow of the holographic displays casting strange shadows. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face. Jeffrey's battle-worn visage locked eyes with Lita's alien features. For a moment, neither moved, frozen in shock and wariness. The silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of ancient machinery and the pounding of their hearts. The human soldier and the Wagner scientist stood at a crossroads, their future on this unforgiving world hanging in the balance. Trust or isolation, cooperation or conflict, the choice lay before them, unspoken but heavy with potential. The tension in the air was palpable as Jeffrey and Lita faced each other, their eyes locked in a silent standoff. Jeffrey's grip tightened on his spear, muscles coiled and ready to strike. Lita's tentacles curled protectively around her datapad, her iridescent skin pulsing with nervous energy. Seconds stretched into an eternity until Lita broke the silence. "You're injured," she said, her multifaceted eyes flickering to the wound on Jeffrey's leg. Jeffrey's stance relaxed slightly, surprise evident on his face. "You speak English?" "Universal translator," Lita explained, tapping her temple. "Standard issue for Wagner scientists." The absurdity of their situation suddenly struck them both. Here they were, exiles on a deadly planet, facing off in an ancient alien structure. A chuckle escaped Jeffrey's lips, and Lita's skin rippled in what he assumed was the Wagner equivalent of laughter. "I'm Jeffrey," he said, lowering his spear. "Ex-military, now exile." "Lita," she replied, her tentacles uncurling. "Geneticist, also exiled." With the ice broken, they quickly realized the potential of their unexpected alliance. Jeffrey's combat skills and survival training complemented Lita's scientific knowledge and problem-solving abilities. As they shared their experiences on Xerxes 9, it became clear that together they stood a better chance of survival. Lita approached the central console, her tentacles hovering over the controls. "This technology is far beyond anything I've encountered," she mused, "but I believe I can decipher it." Jeffrey nodded, taking up a position near the entrance. "I'll keep watch. There's no telling what other surprises this planet has in store for us." As Lita worked, her tentacles dancing across the alien interface, Jeffrey found himself impressed by her focus and intelligence. For her part, Lita couldn't help but admire the human's resilience and adaptability. Hours passed as they worked together, Lita decoding the alien systems while Jeffrey secured their temporary base. Suddenly, Lita let out an excited chirp. "Jeffrey, look at this!" she called, gesturing to a holographic display that had sprung to life. He moved to her side, eyes widening at the sight. The display showed a three-dimensional map of Xerxes 9, with pulsing points scattered across its surface. "It's a terraforming system," Lita explained, her voice filled with awe. "If we can activate it, we could transform this entire planet." Jeffrey's mind raced with the implications. A habitable Xerxes 9 would be our ticket off this rock. The Galactic Council couldn't ignore that. Their excitement was short-lived as an alarm blared through the structure. The entrance sealed shut, and the room plunged into darkness before emergency lighting flickered to life. "What did you do?" Jeffrey asked, instinctively moving into a defensive stance. "Nothing," Lita replied, her tentacles flying over the console. "It's some kind of automated security system. I think we triggered it when we accessed the terraforming data." Before they could formulate a plan, a low growl echoed through the chamber. Jeffrey spun around, spear at the ready, to face a pack of Xerxian sandwolves. The predator's bioluminescent eyes glowed in the dim light, their razor-sharp teeth bared in hunger. "Lita, stay behind me!" Jeffrey shouted, engaging the first wolf as it leaped towards them. His spear found its mark, but more wolves poured in through a hidden entrance. Lita, realizing the danger, grabbed her datapad and began rapidly inputting commands. "Jeffrey, I need 30 seconds, she called out. "Make it 20, he grunted, fending off another attack. As Jeffrey fought with all his military training and survival instinct, Lita's tentacles flew across her datapad and the alien console. Just as the wolves were about to overwhelm them, a shimmering force field sprang to life, separating them from the snarling pack. The wolves howled in frustration, unable to breach the energy barrier. Jeffrey and Lita stood side by side, panting from the exertion and adrenaline. "Nice work," Jeffrey said, flashing Lita a grin. "Likewise," she replied, her skin flushing a deeper shade of blue. With the immediate threat neutralized, they turned their attention back to the terraforming system. Lita's analysis revealed that activating it would require retrieving key components from 3 locations across Xerxes 9. As they planned their next move, Jeffrey and Lita worked seamlessly together. Lita used her scientific expertise to improve their water filtration system and create emergency medical supplies. Jeffrey, drawing on his military background, fashioned more effective weapons and protective gear from materials found in the ruins. Their efficiency as a team grew with each passing hour, each anticipating the other's needs and complementing their partner's skills. The initial wariness between them had given way to a growing sense of trust and camaraderie. While preparing for their journey, Lita made a startling discovery. Hidden within the ruins was a functional communications array. Though limited in range, it allowed them to intercept transmissions from a nearby Galactic Council outpost. "They're monitoring us," Lita said, her voice a mix of surprise and indignation. "They're calling it an experiment in interspecies cooperation." Jeffrey's fists tight. "So we're lab rats now, as if exiling us wasn't enough." This revelation added a new dimension to their partnership. They realized that their actions were being scrutinized, and their success could have far-reaching implications for human-alien relations. As they finalized their preparations, Jeffrey and Lita found themselves drawn to each other in ways neither had anticipated. The humans' rugged willpower and the Wagners' exotic beauty created an undeniable tension between them. Setting out across the harsh desert landscape, they made for the treacherous mountain range to the north, where they believed one of the key components was hidden in an ancient temple. The journey pushed their endurance to the limit, with scorching days and freezing nights testing their tenacity. During the quiet moments of their trek, they shared stories of their past, their cultures, and their dreams. Jeffrey spoke of Earth's struggles and his reasons for attempting to steal Wagner technology. Lita revealed the stifling nature of Wagner society and her drive to push scientific boundaries. As they neared the mountain range, they stumbled upon signs of other survivors, remnants of camps and discarded equipment. The discovery added urgency to their mission, realizing they might not be the only ones seeking a way off Xerxes 9. At the base of the mountains, they prepared for the challenging climb ahead. The harsh terrain and thin air promised a grueling ascent. As night fell, bringing with it bone-chilling cold, Jeffrey and Lita huddled together for warmth. In the quiet darkness, with Xerxes 9's 3 moons casting an ethereal glow over the landscape, the attraction between them intensified. Jeffrey found himself acutely aware of Lita's alien yet alluring form pressed against him. Lita's skin shimmered with a bioluminescent pattern that Jeffrey realized was a sign of her growing affection. As they drifted off to sleep, both Human and Wagner knew that their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected when they first faced each other in the alien control room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they began their ascent, but for now they found comfort in each other's presence. 2 exiles united against a world that seemed determined to destroy them. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Jeffrey and Lita stirred from their shared warmth, acutely aware of the closeness they had maintained throughout the night. They exchanged a glance, unspoken words passing between them, as they prepared for the daunting climb ahead. The ascent proved even more treacherous than anticipated. Jagged rocks tore at their clothes and skin as they inched their way up the near-vertical cliff face. Jeffrey's military training served him well, his muscles straining as he sought out handholds and secure footing. Lada's tentacles proved surprisingly useful, gripping the rock with unexpected strength and dexterity. Halfway up the mountainside, disaster struck. As Lita reached for a seemingly sturdy outcropping, it crumbled beneath her grasp. She let out a startled cry as she began to fall backward. In an instant, Jeffrey's hand shot out, grasping her wrist firmly. He grunted with effort, muscles bulging as he pulled her back to safety. The momentum brought Lita crashing against Jeffrey's chest. For a moment, they stood frozen, hearts pounding in unison. Their eyes locked, and the tension that had been building between them reached a breaking point. Jeffrey leaned in, his lips meeting Lita's in a kiss that was both tender and urgent. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, and not just from the exertion of the climb. Lita's skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, a clear sign of her heightened emotional state. "We should keep moving," Jeffrey said, his voice husky. Lita nodded, her multifaceted eyes still fixed on his face. "Yes, we should." They resumed their ascent with renewed vigor, the shared moment fueling their purpose. As they neared the summit, an enormous structure came into view, carved directly into the mountainside. The ancient temple loomed before them, its entrance a maze of intricate alien mechanisms. Lita approached the locking system, her tentacles hovering over the complex array of symbols and geometric shapes. "This technology, it's unlike anything I've ever seen," she marveled. Jeffrey stood guard, his eyes scanning their surroundings for potential threats. "Can you crack it?" "I believe so," Lita replied, her focus absolute as her tentacles began to manipulate the alien interface. It's a multi-dimensional puzzle, but the underlying logic is beautiful. Minutes stretched into hours as Lita worked, deciphering layers of alien code and solving intricate mathematical problems. Finally, with a satisfying click, the massive stone doors began to grind open. "Impressive," Jeffrey said, flashing Lita a grin. He braced himself against the heavy stone, muscles straining as he helped push the ancient portal wide enough for them to enter. The interior of the temple was a labyrinth of shadowy corridors and vast chambers. As they ventured deeper, they encountered a series of deadly traps designed to thwart would-be intruders. Poison darts shot from hidden recesses. Floors gave way to spike-filled pits, and laser grids crisscrossed their path. Jeffrey's combat instincts kicked into overdrive. He rolled beneath swinging blades, vaulted over pressure-sensitive tiles, and used his spear to trigger traps from a safe distance. Lita, following close behind, marveled at his agility and quick thinking. Their progress was halted by a massive chamber filled with holographic projections of alien symbols. Lita's eyes lit up with excitement as she approached the central console. "This is incredible," she breathed, her tentacles already dancing across the controls. "It's a multi-dimensional puzzle lock. We need to align the symbols correctly in both physical and virtual space to proceed." Jeffrey nodded, trusting in Lita's expertise. "Tell me what you need me to do." For the next hour, they worked in perfect tandem. Lita called out instructions, guiding Jeffrey as he physically manipulated holographic projectors while she solved the virtual component of the puzzle. With each correctly aligned symbol, the chamber hummed with energy. Finally, the last piece fell into place. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow passage that led even deeper into the mountain. As they entered the passageway, the temperature dropped dramatically. Their breath misted in the air, and frost began to form on the stone walls. Instinctively, Jeffrey and Lita moved closer together, sharing body heat. "We must be nearing the center of the temple," Lita observed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jeffrey nodded, hyper-aware of Lita's proximity. The physical attraction between them, ignited by their earlier kiss, smoldered in the confined space. The passage opened into a vast circular chamber. At its center, suspended in a column of energy, floated a crystalline device. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, casting ethereal shadows across the ancient walls. "That's it," Lita breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "The first terraforming component." Jeffrey approached cautiously, his military training screaming that this was too easy. "How do we get it out?" Lita studied the energy field, her tentacles probing the air around it. "I believe if we disrupt the power source, the field should collapse, but we'll need to be quick. Once we remove the component, the temple's systems might interpret it as theft." Jeffrey nodded, readying himself. "On your mark, then." Lita's tentacles flew across a nearby control panel. The energy field flickered, then vanished. Jeffrey lunged forward, grasping the crystalline device. The moment his fingers closed around it, the chamber shuddered. Alarms blared, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Run!" Jeffrey shouted, tucking the component securely against his chest. They sprinted back the way they came, dodging falling debris as the temple began to collapse around them. Lita's knowledge of the layout guided them through the maze-like corridors, while Jeffrey's reflexes saved them more than once from being crushed by falling stonework. As they neared the exit, a massive chunk of ceiling came crashing down. Jeffrey shoved Lita forward, out of harm's way, but couldn't entirely clear the debris himself. A jagged piece of stone struck his leg, sending him sprawling. Lita turned back, her eyes wide with fear. "Jeffrey!" Despite the pain, he struggled to his feet. "Keep going! I'm right behind you!" They burst out of the temple's entrance just as it collapsed entirely, sending a cloud of dust billowing into the mountain air. They didn't stop running until they were well clear of the debris field, finally collapsing onto a rocky outcropping, gasping for breath. As the dust settled, Jeffrey turned to Lita, his eyes roving over her form, checking for injuries. "Are you all right?" Lita nodded, but her gaze was fixed on Jeffrey's leg. "You're hurt." He glanced down, noting the blood seeping through a tear in his pants. "It's not too bad. We should—" His words were cut off as Lita surged forward, pressing her lips against his. The kiss was desperate, fueled by adrenaline and the fear of loss they had just experienced. Jeffrey returned it with equal fervor, his arms wrapping around Lita's alien form, pulling her close. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Lita's skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, a visible sign of her arousal. Jeffrey's eyes were dark with desire. "We should tend to that wound," Lita said softly, her tentacles already reaching for their medical supplies. Jeffrey nodded but made no move to release her. "Yeah, we should." As Lita began to clean and dress his injury, Jeffrey retrieved the terraforming component from where he had set it aside. The crystalline device hummed with power, its inner light pulsing in a steady rhythm. "What do you make of it?" he asked, holding it out for Lita to examine. Her eyes widened as she studied the alien technology. "It's incredible. From what I can tell, it's designed to regulate atmospheric conditions on a massive scale. With this, we could potentially alter Xerxes IX's entire climate." Jeffrey whistled low. "That's one hell of a piece of tech. No wonder the Galactic Council is so interested in this place." As if on cue, their modified communicator crackled to life. Lita quickly activated it, and a garbled transmission filled the air. Multiple parties, terraforming components, race to secure." The message cut out, leaving them in stunned silence. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a look of concern. "Sounds like we're not the only ones after these components," Jeffrey said grimly. Lita nodded, her tentacles curling thoughtfully. "We need to move quickly. The next component is located across the endless sands. It's a treacherous journey, but it's our best chance to stay ahead of any competition." Jeffrey stood testing his newly bandaged leg. "Then we'd better get moving. The endless sands await, and we've got a planet to terraform." As they gathered their supplies and prepared for the arduous trek ahead, both Jeffrey and Lita were acutely aware of the shift in their relationship. The challenges they had faced together and the passion they had shared had forged a bond stronger than either had anticipated. With the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders, they set out across the unforgiving landscape of Xerxes IX, ready to face whatever trials lay ahead, together. As they set out across the unforgiving landscape of Xerxes IX, Jeffrey and Lita's newfound closeness provided a measure of comfort against the harsh elements. The endless sands lived up to their name, stretching as far as the eye could see in every direction. Swirling clouds of fine reddish dust obscured the horizon, making navigation a constant challenge. Despite the grueling conditions, they pressed on, driven by the urgency of their mission and the knowledge that others were now in pursuit of the same goal. As they trudged through the sand, Lita's tentacles occasionally brushed against Jeffrey's arm, a subtle reminder of their deepening bond. After days of relentless travel, they finally approached the coordinates of the second terraforming component. Jeffrey raised a hand, signaling Lita to stop. His keen eyes had spotted movement in the distance. "Look," he whispered, pointing towards a cluster of ancient ruins jutting out from the sand. "We're not alone." Lita's multifaceted eyes focused on the scene before them. "You're right. I count 3 distinct life forms, none of them Wagner or human." Jeffrey nodded grimly. "Looks like we've got competition. We should find cover and observe." They quickly found a vantage point behind a fallen stone pillar, its weathered surface providing ample concealment. From their hidden position, they studied the rival group of exiles. A massive reptilian creature with bulging muscles and thick armored skin moved heavy debris with ease. "That's a Krovak warrior," Lita whispered. "Incredibly strong, but not known for their intellect." Beside the Krovak, a lithe figure darted from shadow to shadow with incredible speed. Its body seemed to shimmer, almost blending with the environment. "A Zephyrian scout," Jeffrey noted. "We'll need to watch our backs with that one around." The third figure stood apart from the others, gesticulating as it spoke. Its elongated head housed an oversized brain, visible through a translucent skull. "A Volari strategist," Lita explained. "Brilliant minds, but physically frail. They rely on others for protection and manual labor." As they watched, the rival group attempted to breach a massive alien vault embedded in the ruins. The Krovak battered at the entrance with brute force, while the Zephyrian tried to slip through narrow gaps in the structure. The Volari examined intricate patterns on the vault's surface, clearly trying to decipher its locking mechanism. "They're struggling," Jeffrey observed, "but it's only a matter of time before they figure it out. We need a plan." Lita's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "I believe I can identify a weakness in the vault's security system, but we'll need a distraction to get close enough." Jeffrey grinned, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Leave that to me. I've got an idea." As night fell, they put their plan into action. Jeffrey gathered local minerals with mildly explosive properties, a trick he'd learned during survival training. He crafted a series of makeshift devices, strategically placing them around the perimeter of the ruins. Meanwhile, Lita studied the vault from afar, her keen scientific mind analyzing its structure and potential vulnerabilities. "The security system appears to be based on a complex series of quantum entanglements," she murmured. "But there's a flaw in the design. If I can disrupt the field at precisely the right moment, it should open." With everything in place, Jeffrey nodded to Lita. "Ready?" Her skin shimmered with nervous excitement. "Ready." Jeffrey triggered the first explosive, sending a plume of sand and debris into the air. The rival group immediately turned towards the disturbance, weapons drawn. Before they could investigate, another explosion rocked the opposite side of the ruins. "Go!" Jeffrey hissed, and Lita darted towards the vault. As Jeffrey continued to set off explosions in a chaotic pattern, Lita reached the ancient structure. Her tentacles danced across its surface, manipulating hidden controls with incredible precision. Sweat beaded on her brow as she worked, hyper-aware of the precarious nature of their situation. Suddenly, with a deep rumble, the vault began to open. Lita reached inside and grasped the second component, a sleek cylindrical device that hummed with latent energy. The moment she removed it, an ear-piercing alarm shattered the night air. The rival group spun around, instantly alert to the true nature of the disturbance. "Run!" Jeffrey shouted, already sprinting towards Lita. They fled into the maze-like ruins, the sounds of pursuit close behind. The Zephyrian scout was incredibly fast, nearly overtaking them several times. Jeffrey used his combat training to duck and weave through the ancient structures, while Lita's tentacles provided extra mobility, allowing her to swing and climb with surprising agility. As they rounded a corner, a massive stone column, weakened by age and their earlier explosions, began to topple. Without hesitation, Jeffrey shoved Lita clear, but couldn't entirely escape himself. The column clipped his shoulder, sending him sprawling. Lita turned back, her eyes wide with fear. "Jeffrey!" Gritting his teeth against the pain, he staggered to his feet. "Keep going! I'm right behind you!" They pressed on, finally losing their pursuers in the twisting labyrinth of the ruins. Gasping for breath, they ducked into a hidden cavern, its entrance barely visible behind a curtain of hanging vines. Inside the cavern, Lita immediately turned her attention to Jeffrey's injury. "Let me see," she insisted, her tentacles already probing gently at his shoulder. Jeffrey winced but didn't pull away. "How bad is it?" Lita's expression was grim. "The impact has caused significant soft tissue damage, but I believe I can help." Her tentacles began to secrete a bioluminescent fluid. "This contains powerful analgesic and healing properties. It should accelerate your recovery." As Lita applied the soothing substance to his injured shoulder, Jeffrey found himself captivated by the play of bioluminescent light across her alien features. The adrenaline of their escape, combined with the intimate act of tending to his wounds, created an electric tension between them. Unable to resist any longer, Jeffrey cupped Lita's face with his good hand, drawing her close. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, the alienness of their physical forms forgotten in the intensity of the moment. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Lita's skin pulsed with patterns of light, a visible sign of her arousal. Jeffrey's eyes were dark with desire. "We should examine the component," Lita said softly, though she made no move to pull away. Jeffrey nodded, his hand still resting on her cheek. "Yeah, we should." Reluctantly, they turned their attention to the cylindrical device they had risked so much to acquire. Lita's tentacles danced over its surface, interfacing with the alien technology. Her eyes widened suddenly. "Jeffrey, this is incredible. It's not just a gravitational stabilizer. It contains data about other habitable planets and nearby systems. Jeffrey leaned in, studying the holographic display that had sprung to life. That kind of information could be invaluable, not just for us, but for both our species. Before they could discuss further, their modified communicator crackled to life. A garbled transmission filled the air, but a few words came through clearly. Council, Reconnaissance Team, Xerxes 9. They exchanged a worried glance. Sounds like the Galactic Council is taking an interest in our activities, Jeffrey said grimly. Lita nodded, her expression serious. We need to move quickly. The final component is located in a swampland on the far side of the planet. We must retrieve it before the Council arrives, or our rival exiles beat us to it. As they gathered their supplies and prepared to leave the safety of the cavern, Jeffrey paused. Lita, when this is all over, what happens to us? Lita's tentacles curled thoughtfully. I don't know, but I do know that what we have, it's more than just a means of survival now. Jeffrey took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite their physical differences. Whatever comes next, we face it together. With a shared nod of purpose, they set out from the cavern. The swampland awaited, along with the final piece of the terraforming puzzle. As they journeyed towards their ultimate goal, both were acutely aware that the fate of their relationship, their survival, and potentially the future of human-alien relations hung in the balance. The harsh landscape of Xerxes 9 stretched before them, full of unknown dangers and challenges. But for Jeffrey and Lita, the path forward was clear. Together they would face whatever trials lay ahead, their bond stronger than ever as they raced against time, rival exiles, and the looming presence of the Galactic Council. Council. The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the forces aligned against them. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a determined look before setting out from the cavern, their steps purposeful despite the weight of their mission. As they journeyed towards the swampland, the landscape underwent a gradual but dramatic transformation. The endless expanse of sand gave way to patches of hardy vegetation, which in turn yielded to increasingly soggy ground. Soon they found themselves wading through murky water, surrounded by towering alien plants with bioluminescent fronds that pulsed in hypnotic patterns. Jeffrey grimaced as he pulled his foot free from the thick, viscous mud with a wet squelch. This is going to slow us down considerably, he muttered, eyeing the treacherous terrain ahead. Lita's tentacles rippled with concern. We must proceed with caution. My sensory organs are detecting numerous life forms beneath the surface, not all of them benign. As if to emphasize her point, a nearby patch of water erupted as a serpentine creature lunged at them, its maw lined with razor-sharp teeth. Jeffrey reacted instinctively, shoving Lita aside and narrowly avoiding the creature's snapping jaws. Thanks, Lita gasped, her skin flickering with patterns of gratitude and fear. Jeffrey nodded grimly. We need to find a safer path. As they carefully picked their way through the swamp, Lita suddenly froze, her tentacles quivering. Jeffrey, I'm detecting an energy signature. It's faint but distinct from the background radiation of this planet. Intrigued, they altered their course to investigate. After navigating through a particularly dense patch of vegetation, they stumbled upon a shocking sight, a Galactic Council scout ship, its sleek hull partially submerged in the murky water. It must have crashed recently, Jeffrey observed, noting the still-smoking engine compartment. They approached cautiously, wary of potential survivors or active defense systems. Finding the ship abandoned, they climbed aboard through a ruptured airlock. Inside, they discovered a treasure trove of advanced technology and supplies. Jeffrey's eyes lit up as he examined a rack of high-tech protective gear. This could be a game-changer, he said, slipping on a pair of gravity-assisted boots. Lita interfaced with the ship's computer, her tentacles dancing across the alien interface. I've downloaded the ship's databanks. This information could prove invaluable. They spent the next hour salvaging what they could carry, including medical supplies, weapons, and the protective gear. As they prepared to leave, Jeffrey paused, looking at Lita with an intensity that made her skin ripple with iridescent patterns. Lita, he began, his voice low, I know we're in the middle of this insane mission, but I can't help thinking about us. About what happens after, if we succeed. Lita's multifaceted eyes met his gaze. I've been contemplating the same, Jeffrey. Our bond has grown beyond mere survival. The thought of parting ways after this, it causes me distress. Jeffrey reached out, gently caressing one of her tentacles. Then let's not part ways. Whatever comes next, we face it together, human and Wagner, breaking all the rules. Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a distant roar, a reminder of the dangers that surrounded them. With new hope, they set out once more, their bond stronger than ever. The journey through the swamp grew more perilous as they neared the heart of the wetlands. Strange, phosphorescent spores filled the air, and the water grew hot, bubbling with volcanic activity. Their newly acquired gear proved invaluable, shielding them from the worst of the environment's hazards. Finally, they crested a ridge and saw their destination. An ancient alien structure rising from the mist, its architecture defying conventional physics. But their hearts sank as they realized they weren't alone. The rival group of exiles had arrived first, setting up a fortified camp around the structure. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, while the Valeri strategist could be seen gesticulating near the entrance, clearly frustrated by the structure's defenses. Jeffrey and Lita retreated to a safe distance, formulating a plan. We need a diversion, Jeffrey mused, his military training kicking in. Lita's tentacles curled thoughtfully. The crashed ship's distress beacon. If we activate it remotely, it should draw their attention. With a nod of agreement, they put their plan into action. Lita used the salvage tech to trigger the beacon, and moments later, alarms blared across the swamp. The effect on the rival camp was immediate. The Krovak warrior and Zephyrian scout, along with most of the guards, rushed off to investigate. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jeffrey and Lita slipped into the camp, their high-tech gear masking their heat signatures from the remaining sentries. They entered the ancient structure, finding themselves in a labyrinth of twisting corridors and pulsating energy fields. The security systems are incredibly complex, Lita whispered, her tentacles probing the alien technology. But I think I can bypass them. As Lita worked her scientific magic, Jeffrey stood guard, his enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger. Twice he had to dispatch patrolling guards, his combat skills honed to lethal efficiency. They progressed deeper into the structure, overcoming each security measure through their combined expertise. Finally, they reached the central chamber, where the final component, a pulsating energy core, hovered in a containment field. Lita interfaced with the control panel, her tentacles moving with practiced precision. Almost there, she murmured. Just one more. A blaring alarm cut her off. Outside, they could hear shouts of anger and the sound of running feet. Their diversion had been discovered. Hurry! Jeffrey urged, taking up a defensive position by the door. With a final surge of effort, Lita deactivated the containment field and seized the energy core. Got it! No sooner had she secured the component than the chamber doors burst open. The Krovak warrior charged in, its massive form filling the doorway. Behind it, the Zephyrian scout darted from shadow to shadow, while the Valeri strategist barked orders from a safe distance. Run! Jeffrey shouted, laying down suppressing fire with his newly acquired energy weapon. They fled through the twisting corridors, the sounds of pursuit close behind. Jeffrey's military training and Lita's advanced mobility allowed them to stay just ahead of their adversaries. As they neared the exit, a stray energy blast struck a support column. The ancient structure groaned, debris raining down around them. Lita stumbled, crying out in pain as a falling piece of masonry struck her. Without hesitation, Jeffrey scooped her into his arms, cradling her protectively as he sprinted the final distance to safety. They burst out of the structure just as it began to collapse, leaving their pursuers trapped inside. But their escape was far from assured. More guards from the rival camp were closing in, and Lita was clearly injured. Jeffrey's own body ached from numerous close calls and glancing blows. We need to find cover, he panted, scanning the swampy landscape for options. Lita weakly pointed towards a rocky outcropping. There. I detect a cave system. With the last of their strength, they made it to the caves, collapsing inside just as the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. Safe for the moment, they took stock of their situation. "Let me see your injury," Jeffrey said softly, his hands gentle as he examined Lita's wound. As they tended to each other's injuries, using the medical supplies from the crashed ship, a comfortable silence fell between them. Despite the pain and exhaustion, there was a sense of triumph. They had succeeded where others had failed, and now possessed all three components necessary to terraform Xerxes 9. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality of their situation set in. They were injured, being hunted by rival exiles, and now faced the additional threat of an incoming Galactic Council force. The central ruins where they needed to activate the terraforming process were still a considerable distance away. As if reading his thoughts, Lita spoke up. "We should rest here, recover our strength before making the final push to the ruins." Jeffrey nodded, settling back against the cave wall. "Agreed. We'll need to be at our best for what comes next." As they prepared for a brief respite, their modified communicator crackled to life once more. The message that came through sent a chill down their spines. "Full task force. En route to Xerxes 9. Primary objective, secure terraforming technology." The Galactic Council was coming in force, raising the stakes of their mission to new heights. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a determined look, knowing that their next move would determine not only their fate, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. With the weight of their mission heavy upon them, they allowed themselves a moment of rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they drew strength and comfort from each other's presence. Their improbable bond, the one certainty in an uncertain future. The first rays of dawn filtered through the cave entrance, rousing Jeffrey and Lita from their fitful sleep. They exchanged a wordless glance, both acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. With practiced efficiency, they gathered their supplies and prepared to move out. Jeffrey winced as he shouldered his pack, his injuries from the previous day still tender. "How's your wound?" he asked Lita, noticing her tentacles twitch slightly as she moved. "Healing, but not as quickly as I'd like," she responded, her skin pulsing with muted hues of discomfort. "We should be able to maintain our pace, though." They emerged from the cave system into the sweltering heat of Xerxes 9, immediately assaulted by the pungent odors of the swampland. The terrain before them was a treacherous maze of muddy pools, gnarled vegetation, and hidden sinkholes. Jeffrey activated the gravity-assisted boots they'd salvaged from the crashed scout ship, while Lita extended her sensory tendrils to probe for safe passage. Their progress was slow and deliberate, each step carefully chosen to avoid detection or mishap. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air, punctuated by the occasional distant rumble of Galactic Council, ships entering the atmosphere. As they navigated a particularly dense patch of foliage, Lita suddenly froze, her tentacles quivering in alarm. "Jeffrey, wait!" she whispered urgently. Jeffrey halted mid-step, every muscle tensed. "What is it?" "Movement, large creatures, 4 of them, surrounding us." No sooner had she spoken than the swamp erupted into chaos. Massive, reptilian forms burst from the murky water, their scales shimmering with an otherworldly camouflage that had rendered them nearly invisible. Mire stalkers, the apex predators of Xerxes 9 swamplands. Jeffrey's military training kicked in instantly. He dropped into a defensive stance, energy weapon at the ready. "Lita, behind me!" The first mire stalker lunged, its jaw gaping wide to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. Jeffrey fired, the energy blast searing through the creature's hide. It roared in pain and fury, thrashing in the shallow water. Lita's tentacles whipped through the air, manipulating the alien technology they'd scavenged. A shimmering force field sprang to life around them, deflecting the second stalker's attack. "The field won't hold for long," Lita called out, her multifaceted eyes scanning for an escape route. Jeffrey nodded, his mind racing. "There," he pointed to a narrow gap between two towering swamp trees. "If we can make it through there, we might lose them in the denser vegetation." They moved as one, Jeffrey providing covering fire while Lita maintained the force field. The mire stalkers pursued relentlessly, their powerful limbs propelling them through the swamp with terrifying speed. Just as they reached the gap, Lita stumbled, her injured limb giving way in the treacherous mud. The force field flickered and died. Jeffrey spun, seeing a mire stalker mere feet away, its jaws opening for a killing strike. In a desperate move, Jeffrey hurled a handful of the bioluminescent algae they'd collected into the creature's eyes. The stalker reared back, momentarily blinded and confused. It was all the time they needed. Jeffrey scooped Lita up, and with a burst of strength, powered through the gap. They crashed through the undergrowth, the sounds of frustrated mire stalkers fading behind them. After several minutes of frantic flight, they finally paused to catch their breath. "That was too close," Jeffrey panted, setting Lita down gently. Lita's skin rippled with patterns of gratitude and concern. "Indeed, but I fear our evasive maneuvers may have cost us valuable time." Her words proved prophetic. As they resumed their journey, moving as quickly as their injuries allowed, they caught glimpses of other figures moving through the swamp. The rival exiles had gained ground during their encounter with the mire stalkers. "We need to find cover," Jeffrey muttered, scanning their surroundings. Lita pointed to a massive gnarled tree looming ahead. "There, that hollowed trunk should provide adequate concealment." They made their way to the ancient swamp tree, its trunk easily wide enough to accommodate them both. Once inside, they took stock of their situation. Jeffrey kept watch while Lita examined the terraforming components. Her tentacles danced over the energy core, interfacing with its alien circuitry. "Fascinating," she murmured. "The activation sequence is incredibly complex. It seems to require a specific harmonization with the other components." Jeffrey glanced back at her. "Can you figure it out?" Lita's skin pulsed with drive. "Given time, yes, but we'll need to reach the central ruins to fully activate the system." As night fell, the swamp transformed. Bioluminescent life forms emerged, bathing the landscape in an ethereal glow. Jeffrey and Lita seized the opportunity, coating themselves with the glowing algae to blend in with their surroundings. They slipped out of their hiding place, moving like ghosts through the swamp. The rival exiles' camp came into view, but their luminous camouflage allowed them to pass undetected. As they reached the swamp's edge, the terrain gradually shifted back to the familiar desert landscape. However, their elation at leaving the treacherous wetlands behind was short-lived. In the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of a Galactic Council scout ship loomed against the starry sky. "We can't risk open ground," Jeffrey whispered. "Not with Council ships patrolling." Lita's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "The canyons to the east. They're treacherous, but they'll provide cover from aerial surveillance." With a nod of agreement, they altered their course. The canyons proved to be a maze of towering rock formations and narrow passages. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Jeffrey found himself hyper-aware of Lita's presence beside him. Their shared ordeal had forged a connection deeper than he'd ever experienced. During a brief rest in a sheltered alcove, Jeffrey turned to Lita. "When this is all over," he began, his voice low and intense, "I want you to know that I—" His words were cut off by a deafening rumble. The ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. Rocks tumbled from the canyon walls as a massive tremor ripped through the landscape. "Run!" Jeffrey shouted, grabbing Lita's tentacle and pulling her along. They sprinted through the canyon, dodging falling debris. Suddenly, with a thunderous crack, the ground split open between them. Jeffrey stumbled backwards as a chasm formed, separating him from Lita. "Lita!" he called out, heart pounding as he watched her form disappear in a cloud of dust on the other side of the newly formed ravine. As the dust settled, Jeffrey found himself alone, cut off from his partner and carrying only the gravitational stabilizer. On the other side, Lita clutched the atmospheric regulator and energy core, her tentacles curling with worry as she surveyed the impassable chasm between them. Their eyes met across the divide, a silent understanding passing between them. They would find a way to reunite at any expense. With the central ruins still ahead and multiple threats converging on their location, Jeffrey and Lita knew that the most challenging part of their mission was yet to come. Their eyes locked, a silent promise passing between them. No matter the obstacles, they would find each other again. With a deep breath, Jeffrey turned away from the chasm, his mind racing to formulate a new plan. He checked his gear, ensuring the gravitational stabilizer was secure, then set off along the canyon's edge, searching for a way across. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, Jeffrey emerged from the maze of rock formations. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. The central ruins rose from the desert floor, an imposing structure of alien design that dwarfed anything he had seen before. But the ruins weren't the only thing catching his attention. Multiple groups were converging on the location. To the east, he spotted the familiar silhouettes of the rival exiles. Above, the sleek forms of Galactic Council ships descended from the sky, their engines humming with impossibly strong power. Jeffrey's heart raced. They were running out of time. He activated his comm device, praying that Lita was in range. "Lita, do you copy? I'm at the edge of the canyon, overlooking the ruins." After a moment of static, her voice came through, clear and determined. "I'm here, Jeffrey. I see the Council ships. We need to move quickly." "Agreed. Meet me at the base of the ruins. I have an idea." Jeffrey made his way down the rocky slope, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. As he reached the desert floor, he caught sight of Lita's distinctive form approaching from the opposite direction. Relief washed over him as they reunited. "Are you all right?" he asked, his hand instinctively reaching out to touch her. Lita's skin rippled with a mix of emotions. "I am unharmed, but we have a problem. How do we get past the Council forces?" Jeffrey's eyes gleamed with a spark of inspiration. "We don't get past them. We become them." He reached into his pack, pulling out the protective gear they had salvaged from the crashed scout ship. "With a few modifications, we can pass as Council officers. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." Lita's tentacles curled in agreement. "A bold plan. Let's do it." They worked quickly, adjusting the gear to fit their forms. Jeffrey helped Lita into a modified suit that concealed her alien features, while he donned the uniform of a Council officer. With a final check of their disguises, they approached the ruins openly. Heart pounding, Jeffrey led the way, mimicking the confident stride of a Council official. He nodded to a group of soldiers as they passed, silently praying that their ruse would hold. To their relief, the disguises worked. They penetrated the outer perimeter of the hastily established security zone without raising suspicion. But Jeffrey knew their luck wouldn't last forever. As they neared the main entrance to the ruins, he turned to Lita. "We need a distraction, something to draw their attention away from the entrance." Lita's eyes scanned the area, landing on a nearby landing craft. "There. If we can cause a malfunction in their systems, it should create enough chaos for us to slip inside." Jeffrey nodded. "I'll handle it. Be ready to move." He made his way to the landing craft, feigning interest in its systems. When no one was looking, he quickly sabotaged the craft's power core. Moments later, a series of small explosions rocked the vehicle, sending Council troops scrambling. In the ensuing chaos, Lita slipped away towards the main entrance. Jeffrey fought his way through the confusion, taking down several guards who attempted to stop him. He reached Lita just as she deciphered the alien locking mechanism on the massive door. With a grinding sound, the entrance opened, revealing a dark corridor beyond. They rushed inside, the sounds of battle fading behind them as the door sealed shut. The interior of the ruins was a maze of twisting corridors and vast chambers, filled with technology beyond their understanding. Lita's tentacles danced over the alien surfaces, her innate connection to the technology guiding their way. "The control room should be at the heart of the complex," she said, her voice hushed in the eerie silence. As they navigated deeper into the facility, the air grew thick with anticipation. They could feel the weight of history pressing down on them, the importance of their mission more apparent with every step. Finally, they entered a massive circular chamber. At its center stood a pillar of pulsing energy, surrounded by control panels covered in alien script. "This is it," Lita breathed, her skin glowing with excitement. "The terraforming control center." Jeffrey moved to the entrance, setting up defensive positions with the weapons he had acquired. "I'll keep watch. Do what you need to do." Lita approached the central console, her tentacles interfacing with the alien technology. The components they had fought so hard to acquire began to glow as she integrated them into the system. Suddenly, the chamber came to life. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing the planet's surface. A deep, resonant hum filled the air as ancient machinery stirred to life. But their elation was short-lived. a series of energy barriers sprang up around the room, separating Jeffrey and Lita from the controls. "What's happening?" Jeffrey called out, his weapon at the ready. Lita's skin pulsed with concentration as she interfaced with the system. "It's a security protocol. The facility is testing us to see if we're worthy of controlling the planet's transformation." As if in response to her words, the first challenge materialized before them. A complex three-dimensional puzzle appeared in the air, its components shifting and realigning at dizzying speeds. "We need to solve it," Lita said, her tentacles already reaching out to manipulate the holographic pieces. "Quickly, before the council breaks through!" Jeffrey joined her, his human intuition complementing her alien logic. Together they tackled the puzzle, their minds working in perfect sync. As they solved each challenge, the energy barriers flickered and faded, allowing them to progress deeper into the control room. With each trial they overcame, Jeffrey felt his connection to Lita growing stronger. They moved as one, anticipating each other's thoughts and actions. It was as if the challenges were designed not just to test their worthiness, but to forge an unbreakable bond between them. As they approached the final security measure, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy, responding to their combined presence. A holographic interface appeared before them, its alien script shifting into a form they could understand. The message it displayed sent a jolt of surprise through them both. "Final authentication required. Hybrid genetic key." Lita's skin rippled with realization. "Jeffrey, it needs a combination of our DNA, a union of human and Wagner." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of ancient machinery and the weight of their mission, they came together. Their embrace was both tender and urgent, a culmination of the bond that had been growing between them since their first meeting. As their genetic material combined, the final barrier dissolved. The terraforming system responded, accepting their unique union as the key to unlock its full potential. Lita broke away, her tentacles flying over the controls with newfound purpose. "It's working! The terraforming sequence is initiating!" The chamber filled with a brilliant light as energy pulsed through the ruins and out into the planet beyond. Through the holographic displays, they watched in awe as the harsh desert landscape began to transform before their eyes. But their moment of triumph was interrupted by the sound of weapons fire. The rival exiles had breached the outer defenses and were now engaged in a firefight with the Galactic Council forces just outside the control room. Jeffrey took up a defensive position, his weapon trained on the entrance. "We need to hold them off until the process is complete." As the sounds of battle grew closer, Lita worked feverishly at the controls, guiding the planet's rebirth. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension, the fate of Xerxes 9 hanging in the balance. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the entrance. Through the smoke and debris, a squad of heavily armed soldiers burst into the room, led by a commanding figure in an ornate uniform. "In the name of the Galactic Council, stand down!" the leader shouted, his weapon trained on Jeffrey and Lita. Jeffrey's finger tightened on the trigger, ready to defend their hard-won victory. But before he could fire, the room was filled with a blinding light. The terraforming system, sensing the hostile presence, had activated its own defenses. An energy barrier sprang to life, separating Jeffrey and Lita from the council forces. They found themselves trapped but protected in the heart of the facility. The leader of the council forces stepped forward, his face visible now that the smoke had cleared. "I am Commander Zax," he announced, his voice carrying a mix of irritation and grudging respect. "And you two have caused quite a stir." As the standoff continued, the transformation of Xerxes 9 accelerated. Through the holographic displays, they watched as vegetation spread across the once barren landscape, rivers formed in ancient dry riverbeds, and the very air itself began to shift. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a look, suddenly aware of a new sensation. They could feel the planet changing, as if they were connected to its very core. Their combined presence seemed to be guiding the terraforming process, their unique union the key to Xerxes 9's rebirth. Commander Zax observed the rapid changes with a mix of awe and concern. After a moment of contemplation, he lowered his weapon, gesturing for his troops to do the same. It seems we find ourselves in an unusual situation, Zax said, his tone measured. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement that benefits all parties involved. As Zax began to outline his proposal, Jeffrey and Lita's attention was drawn to a new development. The terraforming process had activated dormant systems throughout the ruins. Holographic displays flickered to life, revealing a vast network of underground facilities and advanced technology that had lain hidden for millennia. The true potential of Xerxes 9 was only just beginning to reveal itself. As Jeffrey and Lita stood at the heart of this awakening world, they faced a crucial decision. The fate of the planet, their freedom, and the future of human-alien relations now rested in their hands. Commander Zax's voice faded into the background as Jeffrey and Lita shared a silent exchange. Whatever they decided, they would face it together, their bond now as unbreakable as the planet they had helped transform. Transform their bond into something unbreakable. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Jeffrey stepped forward, his voice firm and resolute. Commander Zax, we appreciate your offer, but we cannot surrender control of Xerxes 9 to the Galactic Council. Lita moved to stand beside him, her tentacles intertwining with his fingers. We have a different proposal. Before Zax could respond, Jeffrey and Lita turned to the control panel. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, activating a sequence they somehow instinctively understood. The chamber hummed with energy, and a holographic display materialized, showing a spherical representation of the planet. What are you doing? Zax demanded, raising his weapon. But his question was answered as a shimmering energy field enveloped the holographic planet. Simultaneously, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and a low rumble echoed through the ruins. We've activated the planet's defense system, Lita explained, her skin pulsing with excitement. An energy shield now surrounds Xerxes 9, isolating it from external interference. The activation of the shield triggered an unexpected chain reaction. The terraforming process accelerated at an astonishing rate. On the holographic display, they watched as green spread across the once barren surface like a rapidly growing mold. Oceans formed in low-lying areas, their blue hues a stark contrast to the previous monotonous brown. Jeffrey gasped as he felt a tingling sensation course through his body. Beside him, Lita's skin rippled with an intense glow. Their physical connection to the terraforming system was changing them, adapting their bodies to the new environment they had created. What's happening to us? Jeffrey whispered, flexing his hands as he felt new strength flood his muscles. Lita's eyes widened in understanding. The planet is changing us, just as we changed it. We're becoming a part of Xerxes 9. Commander Zax watched in disbelief as the transformation unfolded before him. His communicator crackled to life, filled with panicked reports from his ships in orbit. They were unable to leave the planet's atmosphere, trapped by the energy shield. You've left us no choice, Zax said, lowering his weapon. What are your terms? Jeffrey stepped forward, his stance confident. Xerxes 9 will be an independent world, open to settlers from all species. Lita and I will lead a governing council. In exchange, we're willing to share some of the alien technology we've discovered and allow a limited galactic council presence for diplomatic purposes. As they negotiated, the ruins around them came to life. Holographic displays flickered into existence, revealing a vast network of underground facilities. Lita's tentacles danced over the controls, exploring the extent of their discovery. Jeffrey, look at this, she called out. It's an entire city beneath the surface, filled with advanced technology. Their exploration was interrupted by a sudden surge of energy. A massive communication array, hidden within the ruins, activated. It broadcast a powerful signal across the galaxy, announcing the existence of Xerxes 9 as a haven for outcasts and exiles. Within hours, ships from various alien races and human factions began to arrive at the edge of the system. Their presence strengthened Jeffrey and Lita's position in the negotiations. Commander Zax, recognizing the potential of Xerxes 9 as a symbol of interspecies cooperation, reluctantly agreed to their terms. The Galactic Council officially recognizes Xerxes 9 as an independent world under your stewardship, he announced. As the negotiations concluded, Jeffrey and Lita found themselves facing the monumental task of organizing their new world. They established a temporary government in the underground city, using its advanced technology as the foundation for their new civilization. Settlers began to arrive, each group bringing their own culture and expertise. Jeffrey and Lita worked tirelessly to integrate the newcomers, creating a society that valued diversity and cooperation. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the burgeoning city, Lita turned to Jeffrey, her skin glowing with a new intensity. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I'm pregnant." Jeffrey's eyes widened in surprise and joy. Despite their different species, their unique physiology, altered by the terraforming process, had made this miracle possible. Their child would be the first of a new hybrid species, a living symbol of unity. As word spread about the paradise world of Xerxes IX, more settlers arrived daily. The planet became a beacon of hope for those seeking a fresh start, free from the prejudices of their old lives. However, with the influx of diverse groups came new challenges. Tensions arose between different factions, each with their own ideas about how the world should be governed. Jeffrey and Lita found themselves mediating disputes and balancing competing interests. During one particularly heated council meeting, a representative from a newly arrived human colony demanded preferential treatment. "We were here first," he argued. "We should have more say in how things are run." Before Jeffrey could respond, a Wagner diplomat countered, "This world belongs to all of us. No single species should have dominance." Lita stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "Xerxes IX was born from the union of different species and cultures. Our strength lies in our diversity. We must work together to build a society that reflects that ideal." As the meeting adjourned, Jeffrey and Lita walked through the bustling corridors of the underground city. They passed workshops where human engineers collaborated with alien artisans, creating new technologies that blended different scientific traditions. "We've created something truly unique here," Jeffrey mused, watching a group of children, human, Wagner, and other species, playing together in a newly established park. Lita nodded, her hand resting on her growing belly. "And it's only the beginning. There will be challenges ahead, but I believe we're ready to face them." As they reached the central control room, alarms suddenly blared. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive fleet approaching the outer edges of the system. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a worried glance, realizing that their fledgling world was about to face its first major test. The massive fleet loomed on the edge of the system, a stark reminder that their fledgling world was not as isolated as they had hoped. "Identification?" Jeffrey asked, his voice tense as he leaned over the control panel. Lita's tentacles danced across the holographic interface, pulling up data streams. "Multiple signatures. It's a mix of civilian and military vessels. They're hailing us." As Jeffrey opened the communication channel, a cacophony of voices flooded the control room. Desperate pleas for asylum mingled with demands for resources and thinly veiled threats. The sheer volume of arrivals threatened to overwhelm Xerxes IX's carefully balanced ecosystem and social structure. "We can't turn them away," Lita said, her skin pulsing with concern. "But we can't just let them all in at once either." Jeffrey nodded, his mind racing. "We need a plan. Fast." Over the next few weeks, Jeffrey and Lita worked tirelessly to manage the influx of new settlers. They established orbital checkpoints to process arrivals, implemented a quota system for different species and factions, and expanded the underground city to accommodate the growing population. But as the diversity of Xerxes IX increased, so did the challenges. Cultural clashes became more frequent, and resource allocation grew increasingly complex. Jeffrey found himself mediating disputes between human colonists and Wagner artisans over workshop space, while Lita navigated delicate negotiations with a group of energy beings who required specialized habitats. Their personal lives didn't escape the mounting pressure. Lita's pregnancy progressed rapidly, her body adapting in ways that surprised even her. Jeffrey often woke in the night to find her studying ancient medical texts, trying to understand the changes happening within her. One morning, as they prepared for another council meeting, Lita suddenly gasped, her tentacles curling tightly around her swollen abdomen. "What is it?" Jeffrey asked, alarmed. Lita's eyes widened. The baby, I can feel its thoughts. It's communicating with me. Before they could process this new development, an urgent message came through from the security team. A group of human settlers, led by a man named Marcus Thorne, was staging a protest outside the council chambers. As Jeffrey and Lita approached, they could hear Thorne's amplified voice echoing through the corridors. "Humans first! We won't be pushed aside on our own world!" The crowd cheered, their faces twisted with anger and fear. Thorne, a tall man with piercing eyes and a charismatic presence, spotted Jeffrey and Lita. He pointed accusingly. "There they are, the so-called leaders who would give away our birthright to aliens." Jeffrey stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "We're all settlers here, Thorne. Xerxes 9 belongs to everyone who calls it home." But Thorne wasn't interested in reason. "Look at them," he shouted to the crowd. "A traitor to his own kind and his alien whore, and now they breed an abomination." The slur hit Jeffrey like a physical blow. He felt Lita stiffen beside him, her skin flushing dark with emotion. Before he could respond, a ripple of energy pulsed through the crowd. People stumbled, looking around in confusion. Lita's voice, usually so controlled, shook with anger. "Enough!" The energy pulsed again, stronger this time. Jeffrey realized with a start that it was coming from Lita, or more precisely, from their unborn child. The baby's awakening consciousness, connected to the planet's systems through Lita, was reacting to the threat. Thorne's eyes widened in fear as he felt the power washing over him. "See!" he cried, his voice cracking. "They're not even human anymore." The situation teetered on the edge of violence. Jeffrey knew he had to act fast. He activated his communicator, signaling the security team. "Detain Thorne and his lieutenants, peacefully if possible." As the security forces moved in, dispersing the crowd, Jeffrey turned to Lita. Her skin was pale, her tentacles trembling. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "The baby, it was trying to protect us. I could feel its fear, its anger." Jeffrey led her away from the chaos, his heart pounding. They had known their child would be unique, but this display of power, even before birth, was beyond anything they had imagined. As they retreated to their quarters, Commander Zax's face appeared on a nearby screen. "I've been monitoring the situation," he said, his expression grim. "The Galactic Council is concerned about these developments." Jeffrey felt a chill run down his spine. They had worked so hard to maintain their independence, but now it all seemed to be slipping away. "We have it under control," he assured Zax, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. Zax's eyes narrowed. "See that you do. The Council has authorized me to intervene if necessary. You have one standard week to dedication these internal conflicts, or we'll be forced to take action." As the screen went dark, Jeffrey turned to Lita. Her face was set in tenacity, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. "We need to call an emergency session of the Council," she said. "It's time to show everyone what we've really discovered here." Jeffrey nodded, understanding her intent. They had kept the stasis pods a secret, unsure of how to proceed. But now, with threats both internal and external closing in, it might be their only chance to unite their fractured world. As they made their way to the deepest level of the underground city, where the ancient aliens slept, Jeffrey couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to change the course of history, not just for Xerxes 9, but for the entire galaxy. As they descended into the depths of the underground city, the weight of their decision pressed heavily upon them. The journey to the stasis pods was cut short by a sudden sharp gasp from Lita. She stumbled, her tentacles curling tightly around her swollen abdomen. "Lita?" Jeffrey's voice was thick with concern. "The baby," she managed through gritted teeth. "It's coming." Their plans quickly shifted. Instead of revealing the ancient aliens, they now raced against time to reach the medical facility. Jeffrey supported Lita as they hurried through the winding corridors, passing worried faces of settlers from various species. They barely made it to the medical bay when another contraction hit Lita, stronger than before. A team of human and alien doctors quickly surrounded them, their faces a mix of excitement and apprehension at the prospect of delivering the first human Wagner hybrid. As the medical team prepared for the unprecedented birth, Jeffrey's communicator buzzed insistently. He answered to find Commander Zax's grim face on the screen. "The Galactic Council has dispatched a peacekeeping fleet," Zax reported. "They'll be entering the system within hours." Jeffrey's heart sank. "We need more time," he pleaded. "You don't have it," Zax replied flatly. "Willpower your internal conflicts, or the Council will do it for you." The communication cut off, leaving Jeffrey torn between his personal and public responsibilities. He looked at Lita, her skin flushed and glistening with exertion. "Go," she said, reading his conflicted expression. "The baby and I will be fine. Xerxes 9 needs you." With a heavy heart, Jeffrey pressed his forehead to Lita's, then hurried out of the medical bay. He had barely reached the central command center when alarms blared throughout the underground city. "Multiple explosions reported," an aide reported breathlessly. "Marcus Thorne and his followers are attacking key infrastructure points." Jeffrey's military training kicked in. He began issuing rapid-fire orders, coordinating defense forces and emergency response teams. The underground city became a battleground as Thorne's insurgents clashed with security forces in the labyrinthine corridors. Reports flooded in of damage to power distribution centers, communication hubs, and water purification facilities. Jeffrey's mind raced, trying to stay one step ahead of Thorne's moves. In the midst of directing a counteroffensive, Jeffrey received an urgent message from the stasis pod chamber. The power fluctuations caused by the fighting had triggered several pods to activate. Ancient aliens, disoriented and confused, were now stumbling into the chaos of battle. "Protect them at all costs," Jeffrey ordered, stretching his already limited resources even thinner. It was a risk, but one he knew he had to take. These beings were part of Xerxes 9's history and future. As the conflict raged, Jeffrey's thoughts kept returning to Lita and their unborn child. He received sporadic updates from the medical bay, each one filling him with a mix of hope and fear. Hours passed in a blur of tactical decisions and firefights. Then, in a lull between skirmishes, Jeffrey received news that made his heart soar. Lita had given birth to a healthy baby girl, a perfect blend of human and Wagner features. Seizing the moment, Jeffrey broadcast a planet-wide message. His voice, filled with emotion, echoed through every corridor and habitat. "People of Xerxes 9, today marks a new chapter in our history. My daughter, born of two worlds, represents the future we are fighting for. A future where our differences make us stronger, not divide us." His words, coupled with the news of the birth, had an immediate impact. Reports came in of Thorne's followers laying down their arms, moved by the symbolism of the newborn child. But Thorne himself wasn't ready to give up. In a desperate move, he and his most loyal supporters seized control of the stasis pod chamber, threatening to destroy the remaining pods and erase Xerxes 9's ancient legacy. Jeffrey led the final assault himself, pushing through the winding corridors toward the chamber. As they neared their goal, they encountered unexpected allies. The newly awakened ancient aliens, now cognizant of the situation, used their knowledge of the city's systems to aid in the attack. The confrontation in the stasis chamber was tense. Thorne, wild-eyed and cornered, held a weapon to the control panel of the remaining pods. "It's over, Marcus," Jeffrey said, his voice steady. "Look around you. Is this really the new beginning you wanted for humanity?" Thorne's followers, seeing the futility of their position, began to lower their weapons. In the end, it was Thorne's own people who restrained him, preventing a final, destructive act. As security forces took Thorne into custody, Jeffrey's communicator chirped. The Galactic Council's peacekeeping fleet had entered the system. Exhausted but triumphant, Jeffrey made his way back to the medical bay. He found Lita cradling their newborn daughter, her tentacles gently brushing the child's soft skin. "She's beautiful," Jeffrey whispered, taking in the sight of his family. Lita looked up, her eyes shining. "What shall we call her?" Jeffrey thought for a moment, then smiled. "Aurora, for the dawn of a new era on Xerxes 9. As they savored this quiet moment, both knew that challenges lay ahead. The Galactic Council would need to be addressed, the damage from the insurrection repaired, and a new balance found with the awakened ancient aliens. But for now, holding Aurora in their arms, Jeffrey and Lita allowed themselves to hope. They had overcome the odds, and in doing so, had laid the foundation for a truly unified Xerxes 9. The sound of approaching footsteps broke their reverie. Commander Zax, accompanied by representatives from the Galactic Council, stood at the entrance to the medical bay. Their expressions were unreadable as they took in the scene before them. Jeffrey and Lita exchanged a glance, then stood together, Aurora cradled between them. It was time to present their vision for Xerxes 9's future to the galaxy at large. Large. As the door slid open, Jeffrey and Lita stepped out, Aurora nestled securely in her mother's arms. The assembled crowd fell silent, all eyes fixed on the small family. Commander Zax stepped forward, his face a mask of stern authority. Governor Jeffrey, we require an immediate explanation for the recent unrest. The Council questions Xerxes 9's ability to maintain its independence. Jeffrey straightened his shoulders, still bearing the dust and grime of recent battle. Commander, esteemed representatives, what you've witnessed here is not a failure, but a triumph of unity. He recounted the events of the past hours, the insurrection, the awakening of the ancient aliens, and the ultimate coming together of Xerxes 9's diverse population. As he spoke, murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mix of settlers, council officials, and the newly awakened ancients. Lita stepped forward, her tentacles gently cradling Aurora. Our daughter represents more than just our union. She embodies the future we're building here. As if on cue, Aurora's eyes fluttered open. The assembled beings gasped as they saw her irises shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The child's gaze seemed to capture the attention of every individual present, human and alien alike. Aurora's hybrid physiology has unlocked abilities present in both human and Wagner DNA, Lita explained, her voice filled with wonder and pride. These traits have been amplified by exposure to Xerxes 9's unique energies. Jeffrey seized the moment, his voice ringing out clear and strong. We propose that Xerxes 9 become a galactic hub for interspecies cooperation and scientific advancement. Our world is uniquely positioned to bridge gaps between cultures and push the boundaries of our collective knowledge. A tall, willowy figure stepped forward from the group of ancient aliens. Its voice resonated with age and wisdom. We offer our knowledge to both the inhabitants of this world and the wider galactic community, but this exchange can only occur if Xerxes 9 remains independent. The council representatives huddled together, their voices a low, urgent murmur. Meanwhile, leaders from various settler groups began to voice their support for Jeffrey and Lita's vision. Even former members of Thorne's movement stepped forward, renouncing their past actions and pledging to work towards a unified future. As the negotiations continued, a soft glow began to emanate from Aurora. The aura expanded, enveloping Jeffrey and Lita, before spreading further into the crowd. Those touched by the energy reported a profound sense of connection, transcending the boundaries of species and culture. Commander Zax's eyes widened as the phenomenon reached him. He turned to his fellow council representatives, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and realization. This is unprecedented, Zax said, his usual gruff demeanor softened. Xerxes 9 clearly possesses a unique potential that must be nurtured. After a few moments of hushed discussion, Zax stepped forward again. In light of recent events and the overwhelming support from the population, the Galactic Council has reached a decision. The crowd held its collective breath as Zax continued. Xerxes 9 will retain its independence, with Governor Jeffrey and Lita recognized as its official leaders. Furthermore, this planet will be designated as a special zone for galactic cooperation and research, with safeguards to protect its autonomy. A cheer erupted from the assembled crowd, a cacophony of voices from a dozen different species united in celebration. Jeffrey pulled Lita and Aurora close, their family at the center of a new era for Xerxes 9 and the galaxy at large. In the months that followed, Xerxes 9 underwent a remarkable transformation. The underground city expanded rapidly, incorporating the advanced technology of the ancient aliens with innovations from the diverse settler populations. New districts rose from the terraformed surface, showcasing a harmonious blend of architectural styles from across the galaxy. Jeffrey and Lita found themselves at the helm of a grand experiment in interstellar cooperation. They established the Xerxes 9 Interstellar Academy, an institution dedicated to fostering understanding between species and pushing the boundaries of science. As news of the Academy spread, scholars and researchers from every corner of the galaxy began to arrive. The corridors of the newly constructed campus buzzed with a dozen different languages, the air filled with the excitement of discovery and collaboration. Aurora, now a toddler, became a familiar sight around the Academy. Her unique abilities continued to develop, often manifesting in unexpected ways. One day, as Jeffrey was giving a tour to a group of visiting dignitaries, Aurora toddled into the room. The assembled aliens watched in amazement as the child effortlessly communicated with each of them in their native tongues, bridging gaps that had existed for millennia. Lita focused her efforts on unraveling the mysteries of Xerxes 9's terraforming energies, working closely with the ancient aliens to understand the planet's unique properties. Her research promised to revolutionize planetary colonization efforts across the galaxy. As the 5th anniversary of the failed insurrection approached, Xerxes 9 prepared to host its most ambitious event yet, the First Galactic Unity Summit. Representatives from hundreds of worlds, including former rivals and enemies, converged on the planet. The summit's opening ceremony was held in the grand atrium of the Interstellar Academy. Jeffrey and Lita stood on the stage, 5-year-old Aurora between them, as delegates from across the galaxy filed in. Jeffrey stepped up to the podium, his voice carrying across the packed hall. "Welcome, friends and colleagues, to Xerxes 9. 5 years ago, this world stood on the brink of chaos. Today, we gather to forge a new path of cooperation and shared discovery." As he spoke, Aurora's glow began to intensify. The assembled delegates watched in awe as the child's aura expanded, filling the entire atrium. A wave of understanding and empathy washed over the gathering, fostering a sense of unity that transcended political boundaries. The summit culminated in the signing of the Xerxes Accords, a groundbreaking treaty promoting peaceful cooperation and shared scientific advancement across the galaxy. As the delegates affixed their signatures to the document, Aurora stood with her parents, her presence a living symbol of the bright future they were all working to create. As the ceremony concluded and the delegates began to disperse, Jeffrey and Lita shared a quiet moment away from the crowds. They watched as Aurora played with a group of alien children, her laughter mixing with a chorus of otherworldly sounds. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up?" Lita asked, her tentacles intertwining with Jeffrey's fingers. Jeffrey shook his head, a smile playing on his lips. "Not in a million years, but I wouldn't change a thing." As the sun set on another day on Xerxes 9, casting the sky in a riot of colors, the couple looked out over the thriving city they had helped build. The once harsh desert world now pulsed with life and possibility, a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity. In the garden below, Aurora's glow softened to a gentle shimmer as she continued to play with her new friends. The sight filled Jeffrey and Lita with hope for the future, not just for their daughter, but for the entire galaxy. As night fell and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Jeffrey and Lita knew that their journey was not nearly finished. New challenges and opportunities lay ahead, waiting to be met with the same spirit of cooperation and persistence that had brought them this far. The couple shared a loving glance before turning their attention back to their daughter and the diverse group of children playing in the garden. In that moment, they saw the future of Xerxes 9 and the galaxy at large, a future built on understanding, collaboration, and the boundless potential of unity.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.